Attention crew, this is your Captain Caliban speaking. This is a supplemental episode of Enterprising Individuals where we bring you news and tidbits from the world of Trek, also interviews with special guests, and a few little surprises along the way. We've got no time to waste this week. On the show, I'm joined by Gooey Fame, my co-host on the BackTrekking podcast, to examine the very origins of Star Trek. Picture this. It's 1964. You meet a man named Gene Roddenberry. He hands you a document entitled Star Trek Is. And as you begin to read, you discover a world that is not exactly what you've come to expect. If you're curious, listen on, brave sojourner, and join us on social media at EISTpod to let us know what you think. We've also got Amazon links for the books that we mentioned during the show in our show notes. The adventures of Captain April of the SS Yorktown await you, and with that, let's get underway. Gooey, it's good to have you back.
Yes, it's good to be back.
You know, on our podcast, BackTrekking, we look a lot at the past, the history of the Star Trek universe, and where things come from. And Star Trek, as a franchise, they're always looking forward. But we're trekking backward.
We're like historians, you know?
Yeah.
We get Star Trek little time-traveling spaceship.
Yes.
And we go plunder the past.
That time travel bit that we immediately discarded, but we still travel through time. We're like archaeologists, Star Trek archaeologists. Dusting off, with a little brush carefully, and then going, you blow the rest of the dust off like Indiana Jones.
Yes, yeah, we're examining our samples and finding the matches. I don't know what you do. I don't know what archaeologists do.
Is Indiana Jones is like technically tied to Star Wars because they're all produced or written by George Lucas or whatever. So, like, when he is getting the Ark of the Covenant out, like, you can see there's a little hieroglyph that has a R2 and a C-3PO. And, like, Star Trek doesn't really have that. The only thing you could do is you could say, I don't know, maybe Nimoy's character in Mission Impossible is a great ancestor of Amanda and through Spock.
Yeah, I guess there's not any fun lore like that. Oh.
No, we got to get them hooked up to something else.
There's got to be a connection. What's that, like, that one theory where it's like all the TV shows connect? Star Trek's got to fit in there somehow.
The Tommy Westphall universe.
Yeah, right? Doesn't Star Trek fit into that somehow?
Yeah, we got to get Detective Munch in some episode.
He's the key, yeah.
Yeah. Some time travel episode. They should have that's it. Have Richard Belzer play the David Cronenberg part in Discovery season 3.
Yeah, he looks perfect for that.
What's this guy's deal?
He'd make a good Vulcan, actually. He could be like Spock's descendant.
He totally
or
would.
Ancestor.
Yeah. But without that, you've only got us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so we are your guides through this universe. And what we do on BackTrekking is we basically look back at classic episodes of Star Trek, and we try to find the hooks. What was the idea for this show? Where did it come from? Sometimes it's easy. A guy like Robert Bloch, who is a prolific sci-fi writer, also wrote a couple different episodes. And so, for instance, he had a short story called Broomstick Ride, which is about like space witches, basically. And then he turned that into the only Halloween episode of Star Trek, Cat's Paw. And so those are clear. But then there's other times where there was a suggestion of something, or there was like a real world event. There was something called the Pueblo incident, which ended up inspiring the Enterprise incident on in the 3rd season of TOS, and little things like that. And then sometimes we flip the script and we look at how Star Trek has itself inspired other media going forward.
Yeah, because it obviously has so much,
including Star Trek itself. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean. That's I guess its own version of the Indiana Jones thing. Like Star Trek just has its own references to its own past.
I guess it's been around so long that it's sort of influencing itself. And we've covered, I believe at this point, every series, haven't we? All 7, 8, whatever it is now.
I think the only one we haven't done Lower Decks.
We haven't done Lower Decks yet.
But
That's right.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Lower Decks is a tough one because the references are clear. We're not really revealing anything, so
it's exactly what you just said. It's just like, remember Picard? Remember Q?
But we've got a couple ideas of how we could maybe do that in the future. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, for this kind of special episode of our show, really dig down and find out where Star Trek itself came from.
Yeah, this is a great idea because it's just like we got basically the creator telling us, here's the idea, you know?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it came from the mind of Gene Roddenberry, but he had to basically sell people on it, as you do when you come up with a TV show idea. And I don't know how familiar you are with Roddenberry's past.
Not really, no.
He was a guy who, you know, he was in World War II. And as a kid, he had always loved, you know, the pulp magazines of the 30s. And in World War II, he, you know, was in the Pacific, and he had started writing, and he was able to, like, sell a couple stories, you know, I guess through correspondence, which is cool. And after he got out of that, he became, you know, a commercial airline pilot and also studied literature at Columbia. And he basically, like, he was a pilot for Pan Am. There's this famous story about how he was in a really bad plane crash that he survived, and it's through his efforts a lot of other people survived. But that's a turning point in his life, and also there's a turning point where he saw TV for the first time, and this would have been in like the very late 40s, 47, 48. And at that point, he was like, "This is what I want to do with my life. I'm going to do this." Okay. And I think seeing TV for the first time was probably influential on a lot of people. Crashing a plane and barely surviving may have been more influential on him. But anyway, he was going to make his dreams come true, and he was going to, you know, try to sell science fiction or at least genre TV in LA. So he moves to LA, uses his experience both in the military and also studying being a policeman previously to land a job in the LA Police Department. And then as he's doing that, like, he is writing scripts, you know, he's trying to sell things, he's getting things out there. And he finally became a full-time writer in 1956. And sort of at that point, like, trying to get his stuff to people, you know, just working that, you know, pounding the pavement. He finally landed his first series and his first created by credit at NBC with the series The Lieutenant. Are you familiar with The Lieutenant?
No, not at all.
No one is. Nobody is at all.
Okay.
No, it
Are
doesn't
you?
matter. No, not really. I've never actually watched it, but it does sound interesting in that kind of, you know, the golden age of black and white kind of episodic TV, you know, naked cities and so on and so forth. But it was about a Marine sergeant and basically like his life on base. And it wasn't like CBS does these shows all the time now. Like, this would have been a great, they should revive this for CBS now, but it's basically just like him dealing with life on the base and then like other problems, you know, with other officers or with family members or so on and so forth. And it was kind of famous because it had Gary Lockwood in it, and he would go on to play Gary Mitchell in the second pilot of Star Trek. And also he was in 2001.
Right. He's just got a good being in space face, you know?
Yeah, he's got a space face. Yeah.
He does, yeah. At least in that classical, he's got a very classical look to him, like when I think of that era, you know?
Yeah, so does Robert Vaughn, who, of course, probably most famously played Napoleon Solo in the Man from U.N.C.L.E. series. But, yeah, they both were kind of early in their career at that point. So, yeah, The Lieutenant was good for Roddenberry, but didn't really go anywhere. Only went one season of 29 episodes because TV was different back then.
You got to get your foot in the door, you know?
And so he immediately starts working on something else. He was probably working on it, you know, while The Lieutenant was going. And it was the idea for a space show. And he wanted to do a space show that was unlike kiddie science fiction, the kind of things that you'd see, Commander Cody, you know, the Rocket Squad or whatever. He wanted like an adult show for on primetime for sci-fi.
Yeah, it's very clear that's what he was going for from the get-go, too.
Yeah. And he had shown it to other people, other writers. He showed it to writer Samuel A. Peoples, who would, of course, be a writer on Star Trek later on. And he's like, wow, this is kind of like Wagon Train to the Stars. The idea of
I love
Wagon
that.
Train. Yeah, Wagon Train being an old show. But taking like the sort of cowboy frontier ethos and putting it into space. And Roddenberry himself was a big fan of the Horatio Hornblower novels. And he saw it sort of as a space Horatio Hornblower. This sort of stiff upper lip, sort of military aspect to it, but also he wanted to bring in the human rights issues, you know, that were becoming important in the 60s, you know, looking at issues of race and class and things like that. And so he smacked it all together and he made it into a document called Star Trek is ... And he took it and he shopped it around to networks and heard a lot of no's. Didn't not a lot of success in pitching it.
I could guess I can see that why. Some of the stuff on here, I love it all, but it's like truly outrageous, some of it, you know?
Yeah, and it's a lot different than what we ended up getting eventually. He took it to CBS and sort of pitched it to them. And he took it to CBS, who he thought would be really hot for it. And it turns out that they were working on a program of their own with Irwin Allen called Lost in Space. And he kind of felt like the executives were sort of picking his brain because he was kind of pitching to see like what they were up to, but they were also going like, so it's in space, huh? Interesting. Oh, there's a captain. Oh, okay. Interesting. And he was like, these guys are stealing my ideas.
Wow. So it was like when they have those scenes where they're like talking to the Romulans and no one wants to reveal what they're trying to say.
Super cagey.
Yeah.
Right. So eventually he landed at Desilu Studios, and Herb Solow and Oscar Katz really liked the idea. This is around April 1964. He had put this first draft together of his pitch document in March 11th of 1964. And you can find this pitch document online. We're going to kind of look it over today, but if you want to follow along, you could just Google Star Trek is. You could find, there's a link through Memory Alpha, I think you can find it. And you'll just find it on Google. But yeah, it's on this letterhead. It's got the date, there's clearly like typed up on an old typewriter machine. And it says Star Trek is, and the pitch is a 1-hour dramatic television series, action, adventure, science fiction, the first such concept with strong central lead characters plus other continuing regulars. And then as he goes on, he gives you, here's a taste. Here's my top 6 pitches. He just throws that out
His
there.
best ones.
Yeah. We will go over those in a little bit. And then as he goes on, like the second page of this thing, you'd think you'd want to you got to impress these guys. They're Hollywood guys. They've seen everything, I made the Virginian, like they know stuff. But immediately it gets nerdy because he tries to sell you on the fact that it's space, therefore there must be a million stories. If you're in a Western and you've gone to Tombstone and you've gone to San Antone and wherever, you're going to run out of stories. But Star Trek, infinite space, right? And he actually uses the Drake equation,
yes,
which is the equation, that was come up with a couple years before by Dr. Frank Drake. And it's basically like he's taking the number of stars that we know in the galaxy, divided or times or whatever by the number of habitable planets that they might have and so on and so forth. It's like 6 or 7 different factors that tell us that, and I think Drake initially came up with there must be like 5,000, human-like or at least intelligent species in the galaxy. And so that was like Gene, who was described as like a really kind of weird and nerdy guy, thought, oh, this will sell them on it. But the funny thing is that the equation he uses on the document is not the actual Drake equation. Gene knew about it.
Yeah.
And since this is the 60s and you don't have Google, he didn't have a copy of it. So he just made one up, I guess, for the thing.
They're not going to know,
Well, I mean, honestly, I didn't know. The first couple of times I read this, I was familiar with the Drake equation. But yeah, I didn't know it by sight. So I was just like, yeah, okay, Drake equation, sure. And it's for me, that just exemplifies like the ballsiness of Gene.
I can totally see in the whatever documentary or biopic they make about him where there's like the Mad Men style pitch he gives.
Yeah.
He's coming up with the pitch and he's like,
this is the part where he's like, I'll do it myself. And he just scribbles something down.
And someone's like, Gene, that wasn't the equation. And he's like, I know.
Yeah. It was Robert Drake that said that years later when he visited the set of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And in the offices, they had the pitch, I think, framed. And Drake looked at it and was like, huh, okay. You made a little error here, but interesting. He actually pointed, if you look at the equation, there are exponents to some of the values, and the exponents are 1. And Drake had to point out, Gene, the exponent of 1 just means that's the number. It's not the number times anything.
It's the spirit of the thing, though, right?
Yeah. But it's that ballsiness that got Star Trek made. It's also that ballsiness that I think that would get Gene in trouble a lot in the future, just sort of doing things his way and being kind of pig-headed about things. But yeah, so his whole pitch is that like, we could have 3 million worlds, where we could visit and have some kind of story there. And he goes on to say that Star Trek is a wagon train concept built around characters who travel to worlds similar to our own and meet the action-adventure drama, which becomes our stories. Their transportation is the cruiser, the SS Yorktown, performing a well-defined and long-range exploration science security mission, which helps create our format. And so that was the original name of the ship, the Yorktown.
Okay, yeah, I wonder what the change was for.
Not exactly sure.
An Enterprise has a more, if you're just presenting it to like an audience, it's like Enterprise just sounds cooler, whereas Yorktown sounds maybe like, some people might be like, that sounds old or something. I don't know.
It's possible. You know, the Yorktown was a ship. It was a carrier in World War II, and it was very important in the Battle of the Midway, and actually sank in the Battle of the Midway. But of course, Enterprise is also an aircraft carrier that served in World War II. And I don't know, maybe it's like, I like ships that don't sink or something. I don't know. You know, Enterprise is also, it was a name for a British ship, a series of British ships. And so maybe it was the idea of, it had this...
more of a legacy?
Legacy, yeah.
Okay.
The name Yorktown has been reused, you know, as an Easter egg in other Star Trek media, most recently in Star Trek Beyond. The giant space station that they're trying to defend at the end is named the Yorktown, or just Yorktown. You've
said Yorktown enough now that it doesn't sound like a word or anything to me.
Kind of like Enterprise. Like, nobody ever thinks, like, you know, Enterprise is just... I guess if you're a business guy, it means one thing, but otherwise it's either a space shuttle or a fictional starship.
It just sounds so promising and hopeful.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that for that reason it sounds, you know, a little more, like you said, promising, and for a exploration ship than like, Yorktown, sure.
Yeah, it has a good ring, yeah.
And he goes on to say that the time is somewhere in the future. It could be 1995 or maybe even 2995.
And did they ever really come down on that in the original series? I don't remember. They just say like centuries ago when they refer to the past, right?
Yeah. You caught me out without any research.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I would say that I don't think they ever really do land on the 23rd century. I think it's more once they start developing Star Trek Phase 2 and also, you know, being in the films and TNG that they have to go, okay, this is 24th century, this is 23rd century. But no, like when you go through, like, it varies wildly. Just little notes that some writer who's not Gene Roddenberry has dropped in, like, hundreds of years ago we were using, you know, knives and bear skins or something like that. And it's like, okay, is that like 200 or 300?
Somewhere between 2 to 900.
Yeah. The whole mythology of the show is pretty slapdash in the first season and a half. Mm-hmm. And you can see all the way back to the pitch document. That's just the fact that we didn't have wikis and like fandoms back then like we do now. But B, Gene didn't care. You know, nobody asks Rod Serling who he is. You know, are you the man who manages the Twilight Zone? No, I'm just the guy that comes out and tells you we're going on a journey beyond sight and sound, you know? And that's kind of like how Gene, I think, saw this as an anthology show. So it doesn't really matter. It's the future. You get it.
Yeah. It's so cool to read these sorts of things in the pitch too, because when I got into Star Trek, it was like, I mean, that's obviously what appealed about it to me, was that it was like, there's all these different types of stories you can do, and they're all meant to pack a punch within that episode, and they're so vastly different, but then you have these characters you all relate to, and so like basically everything he's pitching here, like, as I read it on the page, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I love. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's, I don't know. It just makes me feel like, wow, he nailed it.
Well, he certainly did. And it was both from a creative standpoint, I think, and his influences of, like, the sort of pulp, novels and magazines. But also it was a production concern as well. Because he goes on to talk about the parallel worlds concept being the key. And that means, he says, it means simply that our stories deal with plant and animal life plus people, similar to that on Earth. Social evolution will have interesting points of similarity with ours. There'll be differences, but basically it makes production practical by permitting action-adventure science fiction at a practical budget using quote-unquote Earth casting, sets, locations, costuming, and so on. So every time on Star Trek They go to some planet and they're like, my God, Jim, it's a parallel Earth. It's rotating right to left instead of left to right. Which is actually flip those, but we're on the mirror Earth right now. But every time they do that, and they do that like 4 or 5 times in the show, they just use Earth, or they go back in time. Oh yeah, we have time travel, by the way, because they're just going to set something at Cape Canaveral. That's all production concern, but parallel universe stories were really popular back then. So in a way, he kind of like not invented, but basically promoted Sliders. You remember the show Sliders? Sliders,
yeah. I've never seen it, but I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, Jerry O'Connell, who's, of course, a Star Trek star now. But, yeah, easy to make. You just put up a couple flags that look kind of like a Nazi flag, and you go, oh, no, we're on Nazi Earth. We got to get out of here.
Right. It's just like we take the set from the Andy Griffith show, and then we say in the episode, like, it's a parallel Earth, and that doesn't even really matter sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. And I like, too, that he's pitching it, not just, like, he's not just trying to sell them conceptually, but, like, I love this, like, aspect of it, that it's, like, also, like, it'll be cheap to make.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know if that's, like, I don't know this process, but that seems, like, really clever to me, that it's, like, that's, like, the Mad Men style thing I'm talking about, where it's, like, the extra layer of, like, convincing it's beyond just, like, I got a good idea, you know?
Yeah, I don't really know the process either, although some of the people I've talked to on the show have pitched to Star Trek and they've talked about it. And I think that, like, at this point, when you are somebody like Gene and you are saying, you know, I've got this show, I'll be the creator, I'll be the EP and everything, I'm including a business aspect in this pitch. But if you're a writer just coming in, I don't think that you want to be constrained by necessarily thinking about what you can and can't produce, you know? So it's like, here's like my top 10 best ideas. And they might say, well, you know, we can't blow up an entire skyscraper. So, I mean, that part wouldn't work, but you know, what else you got? Let's talk about some of the characters that Gene was sketching for the people who were reading the pitch. Our captain, Robert M. April, known as the Skipper, about 34, graduate academy, rank of captain, the leading man. It's designed for an actor of top repute and ability.
Yeah.
Which Shatner was living in his car, I think, when he got this. No, Shatner Shatner's fine, but definitely not top repute at that point.
But ability.
Ability. Definitely ability. A shorthand sketch of Robert April might be a space-age Captain Horatio Hornblower, lean and capable both mentally and physically. And he loves to go to the gym and wear just a towel, no shirt, and then tights, just like full-length black tights for some reason.
And he's a real cool guy.
He's a cool guy. He can get up on that thing and like do that little foot-pumping thing, and his heart rate never goes above 60. Yeah.
Cool and click.
And he forms the basis of many stories. In still others, he may lead us into the introduction of the guest star around who that story enters, which kind of foreshadows, in a way, the captain's log kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And his guy really, like, this is Kirk. He's just named April, basically.
Yeah, basically.
They talk about how similar men in the past, Drake, Cook, Bougainville, and Scott, military, naval commanders all. His primary weakness is a predilection to action over administration and a temptation to take the greatest risks onto himself, which I think they really nailed with Kirk.
Yeah, and what they go on to say, too, is what I really appreciate, where they talk about his compulsive compassion for the plight of others. I think that's something that gets left behind when people talk about Kirk, you know? They just talk about, like, he's a cool guy who takes things into his own hands, and they don't talk about how it's usually for what he believes is, like, you know, the greater good, you know, which you can argue with whether or not that's good, but I think Kirk is, and this pitch of April is like a pretty compelling character, you know, even if it's just like a guy to follow on a fun romp. I think it's just a pretty solid character.
That sense of duty, which I think all captains bear, but Kirk bears it the most outwardly. You know, like Picard will make a tough decision, but he'll be like, this is a tough decision.
He
you know,
he loves them.
And he'll make it, and he'll maybe go back and like look out his window, but then he'll be reading Shakespeare and later, you know. It's like, I think that he he's more comfortable with the mantle of power, whereas Kirk is like, oh, we got to do this, but then we'll have to do this. And it's often the solution for him is like, I'll just, throw myself into it. I'll pilot the shuttle. Take me instead.
Yeah, he's definitely a kind of a swashbuckler or whatever people want to say about him. But I think it's like people forget. It's like we love that. Yeah, people love that kind of hero. He's also got a blurb for the executive officer saying, never referred to as anything but number one. This officer is female. So that was always in there from the original pitch. Almost mysteriously female, in fact. Okay, I got to warn you. When Gene writes about women, he can't keep his hand. A lot in this. So that's like one of the only
pencil,
things.
If you know what I mean. Yeah.
Like I said I didn't know his past really, but one thing I do know about him is that he's pretty horny.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. That comes out in all these characters. And even in the TNG Writer's Bible, which I don't think he wrote all of. I know that Dave Gerald and DC Fontana worked on that too. But it comes out. Mysteriously female, slim and dark in a Nile Valley way. Ooh. Age uncertain. One of those women who will always look the same between years 20 to 50. Okay, Gene, let's keep moving. Oh, here we go. Extraordinarily efficient officer. Number one, enjoys playing it expressionless and cool. Is probably Robert April's superior in detailed knowledge of the multiple equipment systems, departments, and crew members aboard the vessel. When Captain April leaves the craft, number one moves up to acting commander. And I think that we see that. I mean, we talked about the cage recently on BackTrekking, and we see that totally in number one, played by Major Barrett.
Yeah, I guess with what I was saying, it makes sense too that he casted someone that he was horny for into this role that he's describing as like
a position on his staff. Yes,
you got to be really good looking.
Yes,
but yeah, she does play it really like she doesn't really say a lot in the episode. I feel like it does kind of. I think she's supposed to come off as like, mysteriously female.
Mysteriously female. Why is this person female? I don't understand.
Yeah, they nixed that idea, I guess, because she's not in the main show in the original series, which you kind of lose that, what he's saying here, because despite him being like, and she's so hot and she's mysterious, like, he talks about...
I want to emphasize hot.
He points out here in the end, like, that she becomes like the acting commander, and then it's like, yeah, you don't really get that so much in the original series, and I wonder why that got nixed,
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this continues to influence Rebecca Romijn's performance in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
They've definitely kept a lot of it. They've given her a little more of an inner life, but they kept all this for Spock when he just moved into the position. The coolness, the knowledge, the analytical nature. Yeah. Mysteriously male, maybe. We've got another couple of these, which I'll just go through really fast because I want to get to our individual show pitches. But we've got the Navigator as Jose Ortegas, born in South America. So the multiculturalness is already sort of baked in here. This character is not really represented anywhere else.
Yeah.
He is described as 25, tall, handsome, and brilliant. He fights a perpetual and highly personal battle with his instruments and calculators, suspecting that space and probably God, too, are in a giant conspiracy to make his professional and personal life as difficult and uncomfortable as possible. I think maybe you see some of that with Scotty and his sort of like wrestling with the engines and the technology on the ship. And also, it says... Gene, it's like he went through a small world one time and he thinks he knows the entire Earth. But Jose is painfully aware of the historical repute of Latins as lovers and is in danger of failing this ambition on a cosmic scale. So
that last part is great,
there will be boning in this show. Do not worry.
Yeah. I feel like he's trying. He's definitely trying, but
yeah. We've got the ship's doctor, Philip Boyce, an unlikely space traveler. At the age of 51, he's worldly, humorously cynical, makes it a point to thoroughly enjoy his own weaknesses. And Captain April's only real confidant, Bones Boyce, considers himself the only realist aboard, measures each new landing in terms of relative annoyance rather than excitement, which is pretty much pound for pound what we get with Leonard McCoy.
That feels kind of like the full pitch for Bones, for sure.
Yeah, we do see Dr. Boyce or Bones Boyce played in the original pilot of The Cage.
Right, I forgot about that. Which that was
by John Hoyt.
We talked about it on BackTrekking, but that's where it really stands out. That it's like this is a show for adults because they're sitting there. He's making them a drink.
Yeah, he's like, here's a martini. You need to get laid more.
Yeah. I don't think this is an exciting scene for like kids that are going to get pretty pumped up on this or anything.
Here we come to the first lieutenant, the captain's right-hand man, the working level commander of the ship's functions. His name, Mr. Spock.
Aha.
And the first view of him is almost frightening. A face so heavy-lidded and satanic that you might almost expect him to have a forked tail. Probably half Martian. Again, this is Gene going, I don't know. You do it. He has a slightly reddish complexion and semi-pointed ears. His quiet temperament is in dramatic contrast to his satanic look. He is the nearest to Captain April's equal, physically and emotionally, as a commander of men, and his primary weakness is an almost cat-like curiosity over anything the slightest, quote-unquote, alien.
Even that's pretty close, though. I like the idea that he would kind of look like the devil. That's kind of neat. And I think that still shows through a little bit.
The studio execs nixed that almost immediately.
But I think it's kind of in there still a little subtle. It's just like, there's definitely something like weird about his vibe, you know, for like, if you don't know who Spock is, you know, if you've been living under a rock or whatever.
Yeah, not after 1966.
Right.
Nobody was. I think it's a great example of like restrictions causing creativity, though, because let's face it, nobody knew what Star Trek was back then. You know, there were no Andorians or swarm ships that could be destroyed when you played the Beastie Boys. Like everything is just being created, and Gene's only one man. It would be a lot of other people, men and women, who would contribute to the creativity of the franchise. And so when they go, no, he can't be a devil. A devil, really? He's like, okay, something else. And they came up with like green blood and all this other stuff.
That's actually a good example of like someone else keeping someone's like idea in check, you know, like checks and balances a little bit. And usually I don't think that's like the studio notes are always the best ones, but I think that's a pretty good example because I think the overall concept of Spock and like Vulcans is like a lot more inspired than just looking satanic and being curious, you know.
Yeah. And I also think that this idea of the first lieutenant kind of disappears until maybe TNG. Because once we do get into the series, Spock is, you know, kind of both what they describe as the number one and the first lieutenant, but it isn't like the go-to gopher guy, you know, the guy who's like, all right, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to lead this team. You know, their description of the first officer and the captain kind of become one. And then Riker becomes the guy who is both XO, but also he's the action man. He's going to go out and lead the away teams and do all the stuff. They kind of cut the fat. Yeah,
I like that too. It just it gives them like a lot more like types of. I feel like it gives them more types of stories to play with too, because I like that there's not just like one type of captain story they can do.
Yeah,
because you have kind of like there's plenty of episodes where it's like now Riker's the captain and he's got it. It usually has a much different tone than like the Picard-based episodes, you know?
Yeah. And just thinking about Riker and his command style, I think it's a lot more like Kirk in that, like, everything that happens to him is like, oh boy, we got to take care of this. Like, he's so serious about everything. Not in Picard. He's much more comfortable, like, being in a captain's chair. But things that, like, Picard would just raise an eyebrow at, Riker's like, oh, we got to do this. Oh, everything is just
what would you do?
Such a drag for him. Yeah. There's one last one. It's the role of the captain's yeoman, a role that, honestly, you know, there's a complicated history with Grace Lee Whitney as Janice Rand on the show, but a role that would just be phased out. And I think it was probably for the best. But we've got the captain's yeoman. Except for problems in naval parlance, Colt would be called a yeowoman. Blonde, and with a shape even a uniform could not hide.
Yeah.
She serves as April's secretary, reporter, bookkeeper, and wishes she could also serve him in more personal departments.
Oh, jeez.
She is not dumb. She is very female. Disturbingly so.
Disturbingly so. Not mysteriously.
You're at a party. It's 1965. Gene Roddenberry sidles up to you and he says, do you know how female you are? I saw it from across the room.
I imagine he's writing these characters in like he's like that old cartoon wolf, and he's like hooting and hollering, and like his eyes are popping out of his head, like
I can see it.
Except for like the weird devil alien and the doctor, he's like pretty much all the characters. He's like, they're really cool, they're lovers, they get it on, you know.
Sure, yeah. I like too that they kind of transferred the Jose's loverness to Kirk. You know, why not just make him?
Why
the
not
guy?
just give him all of the things? Yeah.
So he made a rookie blunder. He overpopulated his cast. You know, we can add people later.
Yes,
and they fixed that by collapsing some of these roles. There's a couple more pages that I'll just kind of skip over, but it's basically him describing, you know, what's going on here, like the world of the show, how big the ship is, the decks that it's got.
Yeah, I love that. That's the nerd aspect again too. Where I like,
sure.
Do you think a TV executive is like, okay, it has a range of 18 years at Galaxy Patrol speeds?
Presumably a TV executive knows what a ship is, probably served on one in World War I or II or Korea. And so, yeah, but it's also budget considerations. And he literally has some format and budget considerations. Mm-hmm. Talks about the sets, talks about some different like rooms that we could have where things would take place, you know, the bridge and whatnot. Talks about casting, and he does say that it would be foolish to state that we'll never do a monster episode, but most casting will be fairly routine. You know, we can put simple makeup on people, padding, wigs. So all throughout this, he's really selling how doable this is. And I think that's important because when you come to a very small but somewhat successful TV studio like Desilu, and you go, all right, here's what I want to do. I want to have this thing be, we're in space, and they're fighting 50-foot tall monsters, and they got ray guns that you're going to have to, like, you know, animate the beams of every week, and we're going to be building models and stuff. He's very careful to, like, continually remind them, like, how doable this is.
Yeah.
Which would be proven to be somewhat true, but not always true in the actual show.
It's wild, too, how much of that just becomes part of what the show is, you know? Like this idea of, like, the thing people always kind of make fun of in that, like, oh, they go find this other alien race, but they just have, like, wrinkles on their nose. And it's like, well, no, that's in the premise of the show. That's, like, what the show is intending to do. This isn't, like, you're not, like, blowing the lid off of anything with that, you know?
Right, yeah. And even it's become so part of the franchise that, like, when you think about an episode like where Data, you know, is up against Moriarty, and it just takes place on sort of Victorian drawing room sets and the one street that they've sort of mocked up to look like Victorian times, that is a huge departure because normally we expect corridors, we expect, you know, everybody's shaking around in their seats, transporter effects. Mm-hmm. And this is before, you know, he's got to tell them that's what this is going to be. Or I thought they hadn't actually come up with a transporter yet. They were just going to use a shuttlecraft, I think. The transporter was a budget solution to that. So, yeah, he's got to kind of describe this, what he sees in his head, before it really even exists at this point.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if we go to a planet, there will be some boulders, and we'll change the color of the background, but that's it. You know, you don't have it doesn't have to be too complicated.
We'll just change the lighting, or we'll just hang another scrim behind. So this is the pink atmosphere planet instead of the green one. Yeah. Well, I wanted to go over some of the individual pitches on the Star Trek Is document and see if we think they'd be good episodes. Most, if not all, were in some form made an episode. And I should say that there are tons of unproduced ideas for Trek episodes. Some we know about, some we don't. If you like this kind of thing, there's a page on Memory Alpha that has information about unproduced episodes for the whole franchise. There's also a book called The Lost Voyages of Trek and the Next Generation by former show guest Mark A. Altman and his writing partner Edward Gross. And they go through all that kind of information and documents and put together little rundowns on all the ideas that never really got made. Also, they talk about Star Trek Phase 2 as well, because a lot of the Phase 2 ideas ended up as TNG episodes.
It's
a lot of TOS plots that weren't produced became TNG
right,
episodes
yeah.
as well. There's also a book, Star Trek Phase 2, The Lost Series, a book by Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens that tells the story of the development of Phase 2 with artwork and photos and the full script for the pilot that was eventually reworked into Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Oh, yeah, right on. Yeah, this is it's a perfect show for these type of pitches. It's like, even if you just like are doing it for fun, like, oh, we do it all the time on our show where it's like, oh, they should have done an episode where they do this, and it's like, it's the perfect format for it, because you can just do anything, and it can be deadly serious or like completely goofy, or both.
I wouldn't have pitched so many we're on a parallel Earth stories, though.
Yeah.
There are a lot of those. Like he said, hey guys, it's a Star Trek in space, and then like half of these pitches are just like anthology show stuff, like Outer Limits, or you could see them being Twilight Zone episodes.
Like it could just be on Earth.
Yeah. Some of them just are on Earth. Let's see here. The first one that he has as a pitch here is The Next Cage, the desperation of our series lead, caged and on exhibition like an animal, then offered a mate. Gene. Which, of course, became The Cage, the first pilot for Star Trek.
So that must have been his best idea.
He probably he put that number 1 on the list. And it was called Too Cerebral by Desilu execs, or maybe NBC execs.
Even, yeah, they let him try to make that one, though, so.
He's an animal, and he's offered a mate. Too cerebral.
It's not one...
I guess they add the Telosians and everything else later.
I would have started with a more swashbuckly ep,
Yeah.
And not as aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they will drape space on a lot of these, but some of these are just literally sci-fi pitches, like The Day Charlie Became God, the accidental occurrence of infinite power to do all things in the hands of a very finite man, which that basic idea, it underpins the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, with Gary Mitchell, and also Charlie X as well.
You got 2 episodes out of it.
Yeah. Squeeze that one dry.
Yeah, that's kind of a classic Star Trek plot there. Like they carry that over into like Next Gen and stuff like that.
Yeah, they do. Thankfully, they use it pretty sparingly in Next Gen. But I could definitely see like a season 4 of Star Trek, the original series, just being all godlike. No man should have this power type situations.
That's like the most obvious, like what would you do if you were like God, type thing.
I would make Wesley look like a guy who is not an adult Will Wheaton.
But would he still have his voice?
Right. I guess I'm not ready for this, Mom. Yeah.
I'm really concerned with if Worf is getting any, so.
He doesn't need fantasy women. Is Worf the one guy who you would look through his holodeck history and you'd be like sick for like a different reason? Because it'd be all like sawing heads off of Skeletors, level 8. You're like, oh my God.
I
thought it would be sick stuff.
Skeleton guy.
Yeah.
Skeleton guy. Okay. His would be boring, actually, I think.
Just get the high score for splitting Skeletor in half with a batleth. With a batleth, yeah. We've got President Capone, A Parallel World. Here we go. Chicago.
Yes.
10 years after Al Capone won and imposed gangland statutes upon the nation. And they have no...
That rocks.
This obviously is, gets made into a piece of the action. But I love the fact that it's just a parallel world and... They just came up with their own Chicago and Al Capone. I mean, I guess it took like, I mean, how does that even work? I mean, I guess Star Trek is
he's trying to be sparing with the time travel because you could just time travel.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it took like, David P. Harmon and Gene Kuhn to basically come up with like, no, what if like we had visited them before and contaminated their culture and then they came up with that.
And then they had to fix it.
Sir.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of time travel, to skin a tyrannosaurus, a modern man reduced to a sling and a club in a world 1 million BC.
That rocks, actually.
Which I don't know if they ever really do this. Spock,
no, I don't think so.
Spock goes to sort of like caveman times in All Our Yesterdays. I mean, is the modern man, does he just have a sling and club or does he become like a caveman? Because there are some like devolution TNG episodes or I guess there's extinction. Extinction for Enterprise.
I could see this one. I think is really it could be really fun because it doesn't have to be on a parallel world, you know. Especially because now we know like whatever.
Yeah, they never go to like an alien dinosaur world.
Yeah, I think of like in Who Watches the Watchers, where it's like they go to like it's some like medieval guys, you know, and it doesn't have to be parallel medieval Earth or whatever.
Yeah.
So I could totally see you just go to like dinosaur planet.
Sure, there's a lot of times that they crash, you know, or they end up somewhere in San Francisco or whatever, and they have to like make a communication device or like make a taser or something like that with what they've got lying around. So
yeah, I could totally see like why not have Spock and Kirk just like have to fight some space dinosaurs, especially because they can look like whatever, especially because like our perception of what dinosaurs look like is always they can look like real dinosaurs. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean they did that in Voyager. It's just like from what we know, you know, speaking of the Drake equation, from what we know about how the galaxy works, we're probably late into the game here in the galaxy. Like I read an article recently that said that there's probably thousands of like dead civilizations who have come and gone in the Milky Way already. If life could form, as soon as we think it could. And Star Trek, you could argue that why were they going to a caveman planet? There's no reason. But it seems to assume that like the level of sophistication is the same across the galaxy. So even when Voyager finds the dinosaur planet, they've got like phasers and like spaceships, like they are dinosaur people.
Yeah, I guess that's just like a thing people, I don't know, as a fan of the Super Mario Brothers movie, like I love that concept of
you did it. I knew you'd do it.
I do love like the alternately evolved dinosaur concept. And I think that's just everyone loves that.
You pulled it off.
Everyone loves that idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea, but if they went a little too far, because then they also had like, oh, we've got technology that can de-evolve things, and it's never really important other than to like turn, what's his name into a Koopa Trooper.
And we still evolved into like people with like human skin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But somehow I am an actual still a lizard person.
Yeah, I think the Voyager episode, from what I remember, kind of nails like being more of a I would say nails, but like it's like a realistic interpretation of how that would go, I guess.
But Mojo Nixon would have made it better though.
He would improve anything. A little bit of Toad in there.
They've got the women duplicating a page.
Great title.
From the Old West. Hanky Panky aboard with a cargo of women destined for a far-off colony. And this is more or less what Mudd's Women becomes, but thankfully no real hanky panky. Everybody on the Enterprise is fairly professional.
But I mean, come on. Let him get a little.
I guess I saw a thing that a suggestion that they had did this on TNG with The Perfect Mate.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. I can see that. I love like, okay, so it's like, what if you were caged like an animal? What if you had powers like a god? What if Al Capone was president? What if there were women on the ship?
What if there were girls on the ship? So we've got the women. We've also got the coming. I'm going to keep talking. Alien people in an alien society, but something disturbingly familiar about the quiet dignity of one who is being condemned to crucifixion.
Yes!
This was top page. This was front page. He's like, that's it. And that alien was a simple carpenter named Jesus Christ.
That is a great sentence to read, because it's not until that last word where you're like, it's just such a reveal. I love it.
Yeah, crucifixion. It's like, Gene, this is a kid's show. And they never really did much with that. I mean, all media has like Christ figures, and Trek is no stranger to that. But like, Bread and Circuses does explicitly try to reference Jesus like at the end. But the episode before that is like a parody of the TV industry or something. So I don't think like they ever really, thankfully, pulled the trigger on that.
Do you think the idea here is that it's the same guy?
Oh, that like Jesus individually just goes to every planet?
His mission is like, I go planet to planet and save all the sinners there.
There is a C.S. Lewis essay called Rockets and Religion, I think, that asks those questions because, if you believe in Christianity, you believe that, God sent Jesus to save us. But if there are other sentient beings in the universe, do they need to be saved as well? Or is mankind the only planet that screwed up and needed to be saved, and so on and so forth? So
that, at first I thought that would sound corny if it was a planet hopping Jesus, but now I love the idea of a super Jesus. Yeah. This is my, because it's even way super more Jesus. The punishment is just even worse. Except really, it's you're going to get, and it's always crucifixion somehow.
Yeah, right. Oh no, these aliens don't have limbs. This is going to be a rough one. Yeah, well, I don't know. C.S. Lewis is a smart guy. Check it out. What about The Perfect World? Landing on this particular planet, Captain April and the Star Trek reconnaissance team find a civilization approximating Earth circa 1964. And it is a perfect world. There are there's no wrong. Everything is wonderful, but the crew is seized, and only slowly does it become apparent that our wanderers have stumbled upon an example similar to the novel 1984. Okay, so that's not even your idea, but with all the rough edges removed, completely efficient, also completely despotic communism carried to its extreme.
Oh my God. Oh my
Because that's what 1984 is about. Communism.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Weird that we're still making that error today, but whatever.
Yeah. That it's what if 1984 was it was now?
Yeah. What if it was 4891? Oh, there you go. Run with that.
Because they end up doing this sort of thing. They usually, when they go back to the current time, it's not a parallel world. It's just we get to go back and see how actually, we get to see kind of the flaws in our current society,
Yeah. So we've got Patterns of Force, which it is a fascist, Nazi planet where a guy's what if Nazis, but good, but also, concentration camps. But other than that, I don't think there's a ton that is really connects to this. I mean, the idea of a perfect world, but something is really wrong with it would be kind of like the Return of the Archons, where everybody's nice, and then it's oh crap, it's the red time or whatever, and then everybody tries to kill each other like the Purge.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. I like the idea too of that communism has taken over, which
communism, making everything perfect, charming, and completely adjusted.
Wait, what? Yeah, what's wrong here?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the problem is.
The problem is that it's communism.
I tried to save us time by not reading the whole thing, but maybe I need to go through the whole thing. Investigation in this direction finds Robert April seized and subjected to incredible police barbarism. Huh. So, I guess just not an alternate planet then? Just our planet?
Yeah, well, that's, I guess, yeah. It's interesting too, because people try to force a lot of labels onto whatever Starfleet's economic system is, but
yeah, even Star Trek does, as seen in the recent season of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah,
but this isn't a story about Discovery.
No.
It's a story about Mr. Socrates. The most unnatural world in the universe, a society secretly in a telepathic contact with the Earth for centuries, selecting and duplicating in intelligent, lifelike form the most unusual intellects produced in mankind's history. On a single street, one might meet such people as Julius Caesar, Napoleon, Florence Nightingale, Genghis Khan, Thomas Jefferson, Carrie Nation, and Adolf Hitler himself. Whoa. What at first seems like pure fantasy to the Star Trek principles suddenly becomes a very real and very deadly game, as they begin to realize that this is a form of Roman Colosseum. That the participants are all gladiators. The stakes are life and death, and the games are about to begin.
So, this is when they're there's a sick band up in heaven. They're all jamming, but it's history's greatest figure is fighting.
Yes. Yes, there is a type of fiction called Bangsian fantasy, right? And
I don't know. I've never heard term.
And in Bangsian fantasy, it's sort of kind of like afterlife stuff, but it's been sort of developed into other things. So the idea is like, because he wrote a book called like Riverboat on the Styx or something like that, and it's just a bunch of like historical figures all together. And so usually they take place in the afterlife. Like there's Farmer's River World series, or there's Heroes in Hell. But it's also things like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you know, or the Wald Newton family, where like, oh, I'm the Shadow and I'm teaming up with Sherlock Holmes, and you know, when you jam things together, that's Bangsian fantasy.
You kind of have like Data playing poker with all those guys.
Yeah, I guess they kind of did that. I mean, really, this is the Savage Curtain, which stay tuned this year on BackTrekking, the Savage Curtain, Mr. Abraham Lincoln himself.
I like that with Savage Curtain they like widened the scope out to not just like
smart.
Yeah, they got the K-list or whatever is in there.
I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do that, you know, in a pitch, but it
totally.
wasn't just I'm Socrates. Okay, that guy goes down. Old guy.
They took Hitler out of there though,
or maybe it was Prime Socrates.
Prime Socrates.
Yeah, when he was not quite as philosophical, but could bench like 250 like a lot.
I saw in like Bill and Ted, him and Billy the Kid did a pretty good job of
they cleaned out that mall, yeah.
Well, they did the whole rescue mission at the castle when they were going to get their heads chopped off.
Right.
Socrates was like driving the horses.
No problem. Got a pudding cup for his trouble. So, yeah. We've got the Stranger. After taking off from a planet, the SS Yorktown proceeds toward another planet in the same solar system. Not until then does it become apparent that an alien intelligence has made its way aboard with the aim of taking over the minds of key crew members. Purpose? To use our cruiser to attack a rival civilization on the other planet. Actually a horror tale, quotes his. We emphasize the subtleness of this attack on intelligence, reaching a point where mutual suspicion is endangering the entire ship. There's a ton of stories that are like that.
Yeah, especially in Star Trek. This particularly makes me think of Conundrum. Because it's like the specific part of like they want to use them to destroy another civilization. Yeah,
or Power Play on TNG, or Dramatis Personae on DS9, which is the one where they all get infected somehow with like alien personalities from like a long dead war.
That's fair. That would probably happen a lot in space.
Yeah. Every week they'd be dealing with that. Is this really you, or are you infected with an alien soldier's consciousness? The Man Trap, and I think this kind of speaks for itself, but I'll get into the pitch here. A desert trek story taking members of our band from one point to another, what appears to be a pleasantly, totally Earth-like and harmless world, develops into 100 miles of fear and suspicion as Captain April and crew encounter strange apparitions. Actually, more than apparitions. Okay, Gene, get to it. These are with wish fulfillment traps, which become as real as flesh and blood. Whatever a man wants most will appear before him. Water, food, a female, or a male, a long-dead parent, gold, or a way to power. And the traps become increasingly subtle to the point where the crew nearly destroys itself out of an inability to separate the reality they have from the apparitions which will destroy them.
So this is a monkey's paw.
A monkey's paw, which our first episode of our current season, we talk about Wonder Woman 1984 and a monkey's paw. This is really like kind of like Shore Leave meets The Man Trap.
Okay.
Isn't it? Because you've got the idea of creatures or apparitions that become whatever you really want to see, but also getting caught on a planet where you don't know what's real and what's not. But it's fun, I guess. It's supposed to be an amusement park.
I like when it's fun, yeah.
But yeah, so it's, I mean, they can take sort of pieces and like cuts of things and like kind of flip them into other stuff.
Yeah, and we see, it's like the last one where it's like, how many times is there a like, what's really real episode?
Yeah. People, it's easy to just have like your current cast crew member act like a jerk, and then instead of having an alien do it, because George Takei is already getting paid to do that.
Yeah, save some money on casting and costumes.
Well, costumes are going to be a problem with this one. It's Camelot Revisited.
Oh, I love it already, yeah.
A planet of Hermes II, an incredible social order which is thoroughly modern in many respects, but retains the knighthood, armor, and other trappings similar to our Middle Ages. Ooh, so I'm not sure that this is what they're describing, but a sort of medieval or feudal planet with like armor and swords, but it's... Oh, that's just Star Wars, I guess, if it's in the future.
Okay, but they still have...
So you've got knights in armor, stormtroopers.
So it's not... Lightsabers. But it's not a parallel world.
No, but it is
okay.
A touch of a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, as our star's wanderers stop briefly to investigate and then become increasingly embroiled in a web of archaic social practices. That sounds great. Finally reaching the point where they too are engaged in lance and sword play to preserve their own skins.
Yeah, I love that.
If you're on a rocket horse and a laser lance...
We get a suggestion that like they were up to that in the cage, like with this previous mission.
Yeah, on Rigel 7, yeah.
But yeah, that goes back to like what I was saying. I like that idea of like seeing planets at different stage of development. Like who watches The Watchers? You know, if they got more into like the combat, I'm sure we would have seen that maybe.
Let this guy go. So Riker has to like do a mace fight with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's like the bow and arrow.
Yeah, they're totally fully modern compound bows from Oshman Sporting Goods. These guys have stone tools, but man, they really developed that bow real good.
But I guess it's kind of more fun if it's like Wishbone style, where it's like...
It is!
Like Cupid is the example of this.
Yeah,
fun.
We've got 100 AB, or A Century After the Bomb, a terrifying parallel as we examine what might be our own world a few decades after an atomic holocaust. That's not even a pitch. That's just like, what if post-apocalypse?
They're like, you know what if that was just in the lore of the show?
Yeah. There's a lot of original series episodes that are kind of, well, not a lot. There's a couple that are set after like assumed apocalypses, like I think Miri, the Omega Glory, which is another episode where people live for a long time, was actually like the result of a nuclear / like biological weapon war.
When would you say was like the big rise of like post-apocalyptic fiction?
Probably Bikini
Around
Atoll, the Trinity test.
Yeah.
Because at first it was like, well, on the beach probably, right?
Yeah.
Or it depends on like if it's like the war side and the conflict, or like the fallout that you're worried about. Because on the beach fits both of those. You've got something like Mad Max.
Mad Max, yeah, because it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like a genre now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I don't know if I just don't know if it has the same genre connotations at this time. But I could totally see because
there's a lot of fiction about, oh my god, I hope that we don't have to do this, And then I think that like Doctor Strangelove, in a funny way, or something like On the Beach or Failsafe. And then after that, it became like, oh no, it happened. So now what's it like? And you've got to scavenge for food, or what have you. And I think that did come later. Because in the 50s, it was all like giant ants and things like that, and Godzilla.
Right. Yeah, it was all like, creature metaphors.
That's Gooey. When you get your master's in media studies, that's do a thing about that. When that flip happened, people are like, oh no, this is going to happen. Let's start making fiction about how to prepare for it. Yeah. Bomb shelters.
Right. So I could see them do like now, currently, like a Mad Max episode, you know?
Yeah.
They go to the Mad Max planet.
Yeah. I want that to happen pretty bad. How about Kentucky? An Earth colony on a planet in the Sirius group is visited by the Yorktown 50 years after colonization. An attack by the Viking-like savages has destroyed and scattered the colonists, reducing them to a frontier log fort life. Unwilling to risk the Yorktown, April attempts with a small band to regroup and lead the colonists in defense. So that's the Seven Samurai. But it's also kind of a Firefly-y kind of thing, Star Trek, I liked that Star Trek. Look, Space Cowboys has been unleashed on the world, and I have to say, I don't hate them. But I like the fact that Star Trek was like, frontier, but no horses. We're not going to do horses. There's no cowboy hats. Obviously, Star Trek would go back and do that later. But It could have been, Captain Kirk with spurs just going all around the place.
Yeah, well, they did it more of it's like not a send up, but it's like they're just taking a little victory lap with it, like.
Oh, like Fistful of Datas?
Yes, yeah. Actually, you described that episode as a victory lap, didn't you, too? It is sort of like, they're just like, let's just go there and do that now. But it's not like, what if that was our aesthetic or anything?
Yeah, right. Like, Worf is like, the security guy, but he's like the marshal, too. Yeah.
I like this story idea because it just, it seems like you could tell a really compelling story there. I mean, you already mentioned some, but as opposed to it just being like, what if there was this crazy premise,
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, like, jump off as, like this is some crazy sci-fi premise or anything.
Next up, we've got Reason in the Isaac 4 group. I see what you did there, Isaac Asimov. A world where intelligent life has died, leaving a perfectly functioning robot society. And the pitch, there's actually two pitches. There's Reason and Reason 2. The pitch goes on to say that the world of Robert April of the Yorktown, they're worried about this being a problem. I guess we haven't mentioned that we've got robots, but so they have to investigate this planet so, this doesn't happen on Earth. And then Reason 2 is an extension, possibly the second part of the previous tale, portraying a struggle of the last human survivors aided by the Yorktown's crew to beat the robots. This, yes. I want to see this.
Screw those robots.
Discovery Season 4. Do this.
Yeah, especially now because like Star Trek is, they're loving the robot stuff now, the AI stuff.
Yeah, and synthetic, life forms. Yeah, sure. I like that idea.
Picard could do this. Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is kind of like a Battlestar Galactica thing in a way, but like I like the idea of landing on a planet and being like, oh, seems great, and then somebody cuts themselves and like oil comes out and it's like, oh my god, they're all actually robots. This is a synthetic society. That'd
be a great, like, early to mid episode commercial break teaser. I know they don't do those still.
We go and Riker eyes into the break. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of iMud, but you get the feeling that like the robots in iMud are there for jokes and to watch them dance.
Yeah, this is like scary.
Yeah, this is scary iMud. What else do we got? We've got A Matter of Choice, another entrapment story. Uh-oh, not guilty. I.e., a planet in which the intelligent life has achieved no great material success, but instead has learned the power to live and relive over and over again in different ways, any portion of their past life they choose. And this is a starring vehicle for Captain April. He's presented with the choice to do those certain things all over again. Yep.
Wow. It's a real tapestry right there.
It is. And I am interested to think about whether or not they were thinking about that when they wrote it. Was Ronald D. Moore flipping through the Star Trek Is document? It was like, wait a minute, nobody ever did this one.
They took like that last part, but I do like the idea of the civilization that's based around it,
Yeah, the sort of their lotus eating by kind of just going through their lives. I suppose like All Our Yesterdays kind of has that in the library of times, like the civilization can kind of go back to.
Okay, yeah.
But otherwise,
I generally too like an episode where it's like we meet a civilization that like actually totally sucks, but they've got like something really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of civilizations like that like, yeah, these guys suck, but we need that Quadro Triticale or whatever it is.
Or it'll be like when the bow breaks, where it's like, well, they suck and they can't do anything on their own, but it's because they have this cool tech.
We need that cool tech.
They're totally worthless, though.
We've got The Radiant One, a love story, the passion of a crew member for an angelic female on a Garden of Eden planet. The one hitch being her chemistry includes radium in lethal quantity. Lead condoms are in short supply. The man who became her lover would live 6 weeks to 6 months, no longer.
Okay, so here we are back with the Garden of Eden planet. I like that.
The way to Eden.
I like it fits in well with the lore of Space Jesus or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is I think they're busting out some of the horny episodes again too. So.
Oh yeah, we got to put those in the back part. I guess it's kind of like is it like That Which Survives, the Lee Merriweather one, where they go to the planet where everybody's dead, and she's like keeps trying to like touch them, but they'll die if she touches them or something. There's also
I don't remember that one actually as well.
There's also just reading through the pitch, I was thinking of the I'm gonna die but I fell in love aspect is in For the World Is Hollow, where McCoy gets like married, but also he's got like space cancer or something, so he's gonna die.
Well, love, you got to look out for love in
Hell,
space,
if you're gonna die, then live it up. Yeah,
there's a lot of ways space can get you.
The traitor Saturni, a planet of incredible oriental splendor, mercilessly ruled as an emperor by a space trader turned renegade, like a visit to the court of Genghis Khan. Oh boy.
Okay, so this is
Genghis Khan was in TOS, in Savage Curtain.
Yeah, okay. But I'm also thinking, like, the idea, he somehow probably connected this and got to, like, Klingons or something.
Yeah, well, I think, Oriental types were on his mind when he was coming up with a lot of stuff, and a lot of the other writers were. But, like, a space trader ruling over a planet is Mud.
Yeah, true.
Instead of conquering, though, he's just like, no, robots work for me, and they're like, sure, why not?
This is probably better than if they did, like... Well, they did do actual Genghis Khan, so I don't know.
This is super pulpy. A question of cannibalism. Visiting the Earth colony on Regulus, April's sortie party becomes aware the cow-like creatures raised on the ranches are actually intelligent beings. But the colonists, who have built their empire largely on the supply and sale of this meat, rebel at the attempt to free their cattle.
This is like a Soylent Green or something like that, yeah.
Kind of. And the creature that we don't think is sentient, which is actually sentient, is all over early Trek, like Devil in the Dark.
Sure, yeah. Even all the way
Home
into
Soil, the Exocomps.
The Exocomps, yeah.
Yeah.
I think of, like, what's the Enterprise episode where there's, like, 2 sentient races on the planet? And, like, one is going to wipe out the other.
Oh, yeah. One has a genetic disease or a problem, and the other one is, like, undeveloped, but they're, like, fine. Yeah.
Right. I guess they like to play with that, where it's like, what if we weren't the only ones,
Yeah. I found a cool quote. So apparently Gene Roddenberry wanted to pitch this to Paramount as the first film. And Herb Solo's like, the premise would have been rewritten because it did not foreshadow an enjoyable night at the movies. And I agree with him in that, but used well in other places.
I could love Star Trek, the motion picture, A Question of Cannibalism.
A Question of Cannibalism. Yeah. Do you like The Undiscovered Country or A Question of Cannibalism? Which one do you like there? Soup's on. The Mirror, near collision with another Yorktown on an exact opposite course. Not only is it the same cruiser, manned by the same crew, could you face yourself after discovering survival depends upon killing yourself?
Okay. What are the stakes here?
I'm surprised that, obviously they use this immediately, twice, with Mirror, Mirror and The Enemy Within. But we don't get a ton of... We get, like, sometimes time displaced or, like, clones, but we don't do a lot of facing yourself. In fact, this almost feels more like Deadlock from Voyager than anything else.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, they don't... In those, like, Kirk doesn't have to, like, fight himself. So...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That could be interesting, I guess, but my immediate thing here is like, you gotta. What's the stakes? Is this like?
Well, the stakes is money, because from a budgetary perspective, a little more eye makeup, and you've got an evil version of the Yorktown crew. So that's what
it's just an evil version, like okay.
And you just flip all the photos, so everything's backwards, and you've got a perfect antagonist for the ship.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you're in that situation, is it hard to kill an evil version of yourself?
I mean, you're evil.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm like, okay, I'm evil.
But to be fair, that's what they explore in Mirror Mirror. You know, we get the idea that, like, true. There are people who are depraved and completely evil, but you got a guy like Spock who's just like, I'm still logical. I'm just going with what this universe is doing right now, which is, you know, Empire. So, yeah, the good question.
It's a good basis, though, because they go so many places with it. And I think all the way to, like, the concept that they end up doing in, like, Deep Space Nine, where it's like, I think of the episode where Cisco has to, like, replace his mirror self.
Yeah.
That's a really cool concept.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, meet his mirror dead wife and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that kind of thing of, which we've already kind of covered in this, of getting the chance to get things that you want or that you've lost and being seduced by that choice. Here you go. Torx, the new building toy for kids. Torx, the first major menace to Earth.
The first.
And, well, this is the first in their show, because the show never went to Earth. But an alien intelligence claiming to be pure thought and no body, which devours intelligence, leaving behind a helpless idiot. Near starvation for eons, it has been frantically seeking precisely the type of food the Earth could supply in quantity.
So it takes you and then takes all your intelligence from a person.
Definitely a Star Trek motion picture thing. Also,
kind of Borgy, I guess.
Yeah, Borgy is good because they need your intelligence. Yeah. Nomad-esque. Nomad and TMP are similar in that, like, we created this thing and now it's back.
I like the idea of dealing with the fallout of that instead of, like, the unassimilated Borg drones. It's like we have to deal with all these, like, idiots now.
Yeah.
These poor helpless idiots.
Right, yeah. Well, it happens to Uhura in The Changeling. Like, they have to teach her how to talk again. The Pet Shop. This one's great. Exactly duplicating St. Louis, 1918. Because why the hell not? A city where... Is
that like a specific thing?
I don't know if something happened. I mean, obviously the war was ending, but... Yeah, I don't know. A city where women are so completely the masters that men have the status of pets. Something of a satire on people and dogs. You know, that satirical thing. People and dogs. This story shows men treated in that fashion, caged in kennels, others clothed and perfumed, and treated as lapdogs, as long as they continue to fawn, appreciate, and selflessly love. This is a Futurama through and through.
It is. It's also... I think it's like a cake that he's working out, I think.
Well, the thing is, like, it only works if, like, how crazy it would be if women had any power. It'd be insane.
It's a little Angel One.
Commander Riker would have to wear perfume. We couldn't have that. And this is the climax. This is the piece de la resistance, as far as I'm concerned. And he saved it for the right moment. Congo, the old plantation days of the South.
Oh, man.
With the slight exception of it being white savages who are shipped in and auctioned at the slave mart. Part of our crew is trapped, thought to be runaways, and sold as plantation and household hands. Ooh, boy.
He's trying, right?
Well, he's definitely getting near the end, and he's going, swaps. Men are pets. White people are slaves.
I feel like he just has a classical view of, like, understanding, like, racism,
what a science fiction or like a pulp story is, right? It's like, what if this was this?
Yeah, but also, like, how to get across some of his, like, political ideas are kind of like, what if this happened to us instead?
Black people, we got it rough. This is the white guilt episode. Yeah. It's like Black Mirror, what if cell phones, but too much?
Right, yeah.
This was actually developed, or they worked hard to try to make this a thing. Writer Barry Trivers did a treatment called Portrait in Black and White, and they really did want to make this work. And David Gerrold wrote in The World of Star Trek that D. Kelly, in particular, was really excited about this story, which is weird because he seems to have such good taste. But DeForest Kelley really wanted to do this one, and he really liked the idea of it just being like McCoy and Uhura. And so I guess some guys with hound dogs ride up, and we figure that Uhura's going to get taken away. But no, it's our southern gentleman, Dr. McCoy, gets thrown in chains, and then we see the difference in this. So it's one of those real, like you said, it's like really clunky, and it's like the 60s old white guy version of woke who's like, no, that would be terrible. That'd be really bad.
Yeah, just like, isn't there, I think there's like a show now that is kind of like that.
Well, there was going to be, the Game of Thrones guys were going to do that Confederacy show.
Oh, I thought I saw a show.
No, you're right. It's called, it's got a real weird title. It's like
Peacocks, Knots, and Crosses.
That's it.
It seems ridiculous as a concept.
It's an alternate history where the black people rule over white people, which is like, wasn't that John Travolta movie enough? I get that this is like an idea and maybe there's somewhere to go with it, but it's not. What do you, the end point is like, it's bad, right? Like, we get that it's bad. We should keep making stories about the real things that happened to like 12 Years a Slave and stuff like that. Why are we trying to white people could have it bad too? I'm not into that.
Yeah, I think the attempt is to just like, maybe it's like to show people like this could can you imagine if this happened to you? And like, maybe that's supposed to be the, like, where the
I'm going
empathetic
to
part
activate
is.
your empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely like slavery kind of episodes they do that I feel like get it, that sort of thing. But
they never they never skip a chance to throw Kirk in chains and rip his shirt. But it's not quite the same thing.
I'm thinking about like, they talk about like slavery a little bit in like Measure of a Man, and it's a lot more
Yeah, but that
tasteful.
was a really big deal that they did that, though, I think.
That's true, yeah.
Because that's like the first real like slavery episode they've got.
Right, yeah.
Well, D. Kelly never saw Congo realized, unfortunately.
Yeah, too bad.
An NBC producer just said, basically, this is far from the Star Trek norm. We're not doing this. Stop it.
They're like, let's have some fun, maybe. They're like, okay, we'll paint a guy half black, half white. No, but
the black guys are in charge of the white guys. Yeah, no thanks. The Venus planet, the social evolution process here centered on love, and the very human male members of our crew find what seems the ultimate in amorous wish fulfillment in the perfectly developed arts of this place of incredibly beautiful women. So womanly, until they begin to wonder what happened to all the men there.
So there's so many episodes that he's pitched so far. I think 3 that are like, what if there were all these hot ladies?
What if all hot women? You know, they did do this essentially in the Lorelei signal for the animated series, but instead of, sexual lust or whatever, it's more, I'm entranced by this, this song or this signal that you're that you're broadcasting. And then they also did it for Voyager with that Harry Kim episode where the Terminatrix tries to seduce him and kill him and suck all his DNA out.
Yeah, I mean,
Favorite Son.
They go there a couple times with like.
And the funny thing about Favorite Son is that was like 1995 or 6 or something. And even then people are like, this is like a dumb idea from like the 50s. Why are you doing this? This is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine some sort of twist on it that would make it interesting, but
anytime you have to wonder what happened to all the men, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's so the pitches there's like a cross section of like, what if there were all these like women that they could get with, and then there's like sometimes it goes into like, what if this mysterious bad stuff was happening to all the men?
Sexy but bad.
And sometimes it's both, yeah.
What about sexy but bad? And finally, and maybe this is part of that, infection. A female crew member discovered to be pregnant, and the growing realization it could be the larva of an alien, using her body like some insects plant their eggs in other living insects, or like humans do. Pregnancy, infection,
Is a deep understanding of anatomy and
uterus
biology.
Scary. The show. It's so. They did this one. Yeah. They did it. They developed it for phase 2 as The Child, and then just basically like recycled it and changed the names for The Child, the season 2 opener of TNG.
It turned out okay.
No, it didn't. It's terrible. I wanted to do this on. You shot it down. I wanted to do it on BackTrekking and read the Captain Marvel comic book storyline where she is impregnated by a guy and then she an energy being, and she gives birth to a flesh and blood version of him and then falls in love with him. And it's like the worst Captain Marvel story ever.
That sounds sick.
Whoever, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's basically the guy just going, girls are gross.
We should do that, actually. That sounds cool.
Okay, I sold you on it. You heard it here, folks.
You got me. You cornered me on the record. I think it sounds great.
And we'll do the child, and then we can talk about phase 2. So that's it. I don't know. What'd you come away with?
I mean, the standout thing that's like was not unexpected, but like not what I was like thinking about was just like, all the like sexy episodes of female enslavement. But the main thing that I come away with as like reaffirming things is what I was saying earlier of like, this is like such a strong idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems almost obvious now because we know what a Titan Star Trek is, but it's just like such a fully formed strong idea, and like you can see how the show only becomes so much more of a mainstay over time because they had such a strong foundation, I think.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's ambitious because if you think about something like Gunsmoke or The Rifleman or Wagon Train, I suppose is the going somewhere part. All those shows, you just come to the town, you come to the Bonanza Ranch or whatever. You don't have to change things around too much, but he is proposing like going other places. And that is the, studio executives' ears would perk up and be like, well, that sounds like it's going to cost money. So it makes sense that he's constantly trying to tell them, no, this is totally possible to do. And I think that was smart on his part. And we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but like, a lot of this is kind of based on the idea of Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. The idea that Gulliver would go to places, he would have adventures and voyage to other lands. And of course, the people in those lands would satirically represent some party in the British Parliament that doesn't exist anymore, but it would be social satire, and it would be dealing with the issues of today in another world, which is exactly what Star Trek does. And I think that it was really smart. This has been done in other places before, but the fact that he came up with this like idea for social commentary in an episodic form that was a space adventure show, I would almost say, whoa, it's too many hats, but it works.
No.
Yeah.
It's exactly, you mentioned it earlier of his background of like, served in the military, pulp, TV show. It's like you stir those three things together and it's like a perfect, and then throw some like, and what if it was like the Twilight Zone or whatever,
And I'm not thrilled that he was a cop, but he was a guy who had empathy, and he was out on the street and probably seeing things and, running into social problems and thinking, I'm just a cop. I wish that there was some way that we could fix all this. What if just free food and energy forever? Maybe I can make a show out of that. Like, I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, I think, that it's just like a nice little package, like all around. Everything about it is they nailed it.
And so economical too. It can be done for cheap.
Yep, that was the most important part, actually.
Well, this was fun. I'm glad that we decided to do this. And I don't know, maybe I'll dig around and see if there's any other Star Trek documents or historical things that we can have you come back and look at with us.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a Trek historian.
Yeah, you are.
I know a lot because you tell me these things.
I believe that you know these things.
And then I remember some of it.
Tell people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Gooey Fame, and you should go listen to BackTrekking, my other show with you.
Yeah, we've got some fun stuff coming up on BackTrekking, which you can find at BackTrekking on Twitter. And I mean, like, we talked about how we did Wonder Woman. We've got other stuff coming up. We're going to if any movies come out this year, we've got some Star Trek episodes that go with those movies.
Hopefully some movies come out.
Yeah, we've already got an F9 episode lined up. I don't want to ruin it.
Yes.
And we've got Independence Day and Rambo First Blood. A lot of movies this year. It's just easy to do movies, but also we talk about, like we said, literature,
we're film historians, too.
Yeah, we are film historians.
Yeah.
So check that out. Gooey, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.